All right. Bryce Gelman here. NBA season is back. The Knicks are back. Going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about Julius Randle, OG Anunoby, some extremely important factors that I think the Knicks' success hinge on coming up later on in this episode. But we're going to start here with Julius Randle, who yesterday spoke to the media and came out with this smile on his face. It looked like we were going to hear a lot of what Tom Thibodeau had to say the day before on Tuesday, basically all positive updates on Randle. Randle comes in and listen, he looks happy. Like he's upbeat. It looks like there isn't much to be concerned about. He says he's making positive progress. No setbacks. He did say that he hasn't, played through contact yet. He's been, shooting around, whatever you may have it. But here's the big bomb that he dropped on all of us Knicks fans is that Julius Randle has not ruled out surgery for his dislocated shoulder. And I think that throws a wrench in a lot of expectations that we have for this Knicks team and for the Eastern Conference as a whole, because Julius Randle, say what you want about him, say what you want about what he's done in the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years, say what you want about how he's played, at the start of each season, specifically this season. Julius Randle is one of the most impactful players in the Eastern Conference. He was an all-star for a reason, and he is extremely needed for this Knicks team. That's not a crazy thing to say. You don't need to hear that from me to understand that. But I think a lot of people don't fully grasp what this means. The fact that Randle will not be 100% when he comes back, if surgery's still on the table, that proves to you that Julius Randle will be playing at 80, 90%. Let's hope 95. Who knows? But what about Julius Randle throughout these past years has remained constant and true, no matter what outside factors are at play? When he's hurt, when he's not at 100%, he is a non-factor for this Knicks team. And that's what I'm most concerned about when he said that. Because, yes, he walked in, he looked happy. I think a lot of Knicks fans were like, okay, here's the good news. And he did give us some good news, and then he dropped that on us. And as a Knicks fan, I see what he has been for this team when he hasn't been 100%, and it's concerning. It is. At the start of the season, he was terrible. The Knicks were not a good basketball team at the start of this year because of how poorly Julius Randle was playing. And he totally came into his own after that, when you could see that he was 100%, when you could see the changes that he made this offseason take effect. And the Knicks have relied heavily upon Randle these last 4 years. And you could say that his injury last year during the playoffs, you could say, his poor play in the 2021 playoffs against the Hawks was due to fatigue, was due to the fact that he rarely missed games, was due to the fact that he was constantly out there playing his ass off for the Knicks, being the Swiss Army knife on both ends of the floor and being the kind of guy that the Knicks have come to expect of Julius Randle over these past 4 or 5 years. We're going to get the same of that again? Are we really about to see a hobbled Julius Randle yet again in the playoffs, forcing himself to play through injury? That's a major factor here. And it's concerning. It is. I can't spin it any other way. I mean, what these past few weeks since that Heat game where he injured the shoulder have shown us are that Jalen Brunson can pick up the slack and can do it alone. In the 10 games that he's played without Julius Randle as a Knick, he's averaging 33.8 points and 7 assists per game. Like, he has taken the slack. He's picked up the slack, played like a superstar without Julius Randle. But what does that tell you? The usage, the having to take 25, 30 shots a game. He's going to get worn out. He's going to get tired. He's going to become what Julius Randle has been in the playoffs these past couple of years when they've been in the playoffs. That's the other factor here. Is that yes, you did acquire Bojan Bogdanovic. You did acquire Alec Burks. You do have Dante DiVincenzo, who has proven to be another extremely underrated signing for the Knicks, who has played way above his contract. So you've got guys who could pick up the offensive slack. But one thing you're not going to be able to figure out, And one thing you're not going to be able to just, play through is the focus that the opposing defenses will put on Jalen Brunson each time down on offense. Yes, fine. Like, you can't, like, the guys won't be leaving DiVincenzo. Guys won't be leaving Bogdanovich. But Precious Achiuwa, Hartenstein, Josh Hart, that is a huge problem that the Knicks will continue to face, especially in these upcoming games. I mean, this upcoming stretch of games is not easy whatsoever. I mean, they've got the Sixers, they've got the Celtics, yes, they've got the Pistons. That should be an easy win. They have the Pelicans, the Warriors, the Cavs, the Hawks, the Magic, and then the Sixers 2 times in a row in March. They're going to have to figure out how to tread water right now. And they did a terrible job of doing that before the All-Star break. I understand injuries happen. I understand Hartenstein was hurt, didn't play, the 4 or 5 games before the All-Star break. I understand Bojan Bogdanovich missed a game or 2 there. I understand that DiVincenzo also got hurt. Okay, totally get it. There are different factors at play for any team trying to compete for a championship. And we knew this going into the trade deadline. The Knicks would be without 2 or 3 of 5 of their most impactful players going forward. We didn't really know about OG Anunoby. After the trade deadline, it was released that he was getting surgery and he would be out longer than a lot of us expected. We knew Mitchell Robinson was going to be out for a longer period of time. We knew that Julius Randle, there were a lot of question marks from the injury that he faced. So the Knicks need to figure this out right now. And I saw a bunch of reports or whatever opinion pieces saying the Knicks didn't do enough at the trade deadline. They did everything they needed to. They acquired the offensive help. They acquired the missing depth that they traded away when they got rid of Emmanuel quickly. They did everything that they needed to do. What was I saying? What was every Knicks talking head saying before the trade deadline? The Knicks need offense off the bench. They did that. They got that. So you can't say it now that all these injuries are just starting to look even more, doom and gloom on the Knicks forecast and outlook going forward. It's easy to say. It's easy to say now. 100% is. But does it remain true that the Knicks, in their minds, did not do enough to trade deadline? I don't think so. I think that's complete hearsay. I think it's garbage. Whoever wrote that take should be ashamed of themselves. So right now, this is certainly, again, a concerning time for the Knicks. And as I've said, I'm going to reiterate it yet again, is that it seems like Julius Randle will not be getting surgery. And knock on wood, we don't know. But from what he was saying, from the positive look on his face, from the twinkle in his eye during his press conference yesterday, all signs point to Julius Randle being back for the Knicks before the playoffs, hopefully mid-March, hopefully by the end of March. Okay. But Julius Randle as a non-100% player, playing through an injury, is a non-factor for the Knicks. He is. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Especially his shoulder injury. I understand it was his off shoulder was his right shoulder, not his left. Thank God. But is this going to change how Julius Randle plays basketball? Is this going to have him revert back to what he was last year and the year before? In a guy who's heavily relying on an outside game that isn't there, a guy that isn't using his size and strength in the paint because he's afraid and would rather settle for long 2s and 3-pointers. That remains to be seen. And I think that that's the biggest factor. Like the injury, of course. I mean, like, Randle doesn't play. The Knicks are screwed. They're not going anywhere. But in the likely chance that he does return, I think that that's the biggest factor for the Knicks, is what Julius Randle is when he returns. Because if he's not that 100% guy, if he's not that physical presence down low, you might as well just hold him out. You might as well just let him have the surgery, allow him to prolong his career, as he said. I mean, he said, I'll never say never. All options are still on the table, because there has to be a reasonable concern that if he re-injures this, if he re-aggravates this injury, that this could ruin what he has going forward in terms of his physicality. His biggest positive trait that he has is his physicality. So I think that there's definitely a concern there from him. And our concern is the fact that we may have to watch Julius Randle throw away another couple playoff series. We might have to watch Julius Randle try to force playing through an injury where the Knicks aren't, finishing the year as good as we all think that they can be. And I think that Randle aside, because you get him back before the season ends. Yes, the Knicks have obviously missed Julius Randle, but you get him back before the season ends. There's no guarantees. There aren't that the Knicks are going to play better. There is one guarantee, though. It's OG Anunoby. And I think as good as Randle has proven to be, as important a factor he is for the Knicks' success, I think Anunoby's right there, if not more. And we could dive into the stats here. We could discuss exactly what OG Anunoby brings to this team. And here it is. The Knicks have 105.5 defensive rating in the league with him. And guess what it is without, including all the games before they traded for him? 117.8. It's a difference of 12 in defensive rating. What other guy in the NBA, and I'm sure there are guys out there, but off the top of my head, I could only name like one or two, like a Drew Holiday. What kind of guys are out there that are that important on the defensive end? And not only just that, in those few games leading up to his injury, his bone injury in his elbow, he was showing an offensive side of his game that we hadn't seen in the first few games that he played for the Knicks. He was a little shy, he was a little timid. He was mostly relying on well-timed cuts, which we were still seeing even when he developed that offensive game. But when Randle, not only when Randle, I guess they literally got injured in the same game, but in those last few games that Anunoby played, we were starting to see more of a post game, more of a physicality that we hadn't seen from him, and as you should be showing it as a guy who's 6'8" with the length that he has, with his physicality. You get both him and Randle back playing near 100%, then this Knicks team is what everyone said they could be when they made the trade for Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks, which is a championship caliber team. I don't think anyone expected that going into the season. Even at the end of last season, they made the positive strides to advance to the second round of the playoffs against the Miami Heat to lose to the number 8 seed. They had a chance to advance that game, to advance to game 7 there. But you didn't really expect going into this year that the Knicks would have as high of a ceiling as they do if everyone's healthy. I think a lot of people they still have these younger guys in Barrett, Quickly, Grimes, McBride that aren't exactly surefire pieces on a championship contending team. You also have the question mark with Emmanuel Quickly's contract, with the Knicks and Quickly not being able to agree on an extension before the season. There were the question marks there, with the contracts, and there were the question marks with how well those guys fit together, how well RJ Barrett fit into a system where he wasn't one of the top 2 options. And the Knicks cleared all those concerns. They made it as clear as day that this team, without having to go out and acquire a superstar piece, was ready to compete in the Eastern Conference. Leon Rose, Worldwide West, they defied the odds. The odds of that Knicks fans were placing on them, but more importantly, the national media, which we're not putting much stock into what they say. But they had a point. They had a point at the time that the Knicks needed to go out and get a superstar player, and guess what they did? They looked Candace Parker in the face. They looked all these other guys who love to discredit the Knicks, the fake Knicks fan and Stephen A. Smith. They looked them in the face and said, "Watch this. We're going to acquire a game-changing, a team-changing, generational defender in OG Anunoby." And the Knicks, okay, yeah, they look really good, but what are their aspirations realistically, right? With Jalen Brunson, the tiny Jalen Brunson, and Julius Randle is their top 2. But come on, this team's not for real. What do? They use the Fournier expiring contract. They use Quentin Grimes and second-round picks, and they get Bojan Bogdanovic. An incredible addition and an incredible score on a championship team. That's the type of guy that you want on your bench. That's like the Sean Livingston. That's like all those Warriors teams. That's the Iguodala of your team. Defensively, Bojan Bogdanovic, yes, he has his question marks. But offensively, he could take the load off Brunson. He could take the load off Randle, especially if Randle comes back. The Knicks make the playoffs, and Randle is a shell of himself. They could defer to Bogdanovic. They could defer to DiVincenzo. They could defer to Burks, who, again, I'm not very high on. I really didn't love what I saw from him over that last stretch of games. He had the opportunity to take a step up with all the injuries before the All-Star break. He didn't exactly do that. I think that as the players come back and as more eyes get set on other guys that come in, especially when he's playing more with Bogdanovic, I think lanes will open up for him, and I think he'll become a more efficient player, but I didn't like what I saw. But yes, the Knicks defied the odds. Their front office did what a lot of people didn't think could be done, which is build a championship contender while keeping every single one of your first-round picks, which is just an incredible feat. Because the Knicks, with the team they have right now, they have tradable contracts as well. Bogdanovic has an option. Bogdanovic is probably going to be back with the Knicks next year. He wasn't an expiring deal. The Knicks want to keep him. If the Knicks want to build on what they had this year, if the Knicks reasonably think that with a healthy Anunoby, a re-signed Anunoby, a healthy Randle, a healthy Mitchell Robinson next year, hopefully they could bring back Hartenstein. I don't know how likely that is, that the Knicks could run it back next year. And if they decide at the trade deadline, or if they decide in the offseason that they don't in fact want to go with that plan, they have tradable contracts and they have all these first-round picks to trade for that superstar. So they did all of that. They got rid of all these younger guys who everyone kept saying had so much value, and they did eventually have value in terms of the Knicks not having to give up their picks in order to get rid of them, or in order, obviously, to get the players they got in return, while also giving them up. So this is, listen, frustrating, extremely frustrating to consider what this team could be and what this team might even be. Like, this could all be for nothing. I could revisit this podcast and, replay these clips and review what I had to say and be like, all this is for nothing. I hope I'm wrong about Randle. I sincerely hope that Randle can come back and prove us all wrong, but it's just looking more and more likely with all these comments, with the I'm not ruling surgery out, that Julius Randle will not be 100% going into the playoffs. And I think it will be very difficult for him to become as impactful in the playoffs and in big moments as we all really thought that he could be if he's not 100%. Like, the deviation from what he's been over the past few years is not going to be there. And when the injury happened, when it was reported that, they didn't really know what the structural damage would be. I had a few friends who had dislocated shoulders in the past, and they said that it doesn't really fully heal without surgery, especially if there's damage to the joint or to the tissue or whatever you may have it. If there was a tear, excuse me, that it wouldn't be very, very promising going forward. But I mean, at the time, I still thought even before that, it was like, okay, Randle will get the rest that he needs to prepare for the final stretch of games, but he's already going to come back pretty worn out, especially if he's not able to be the physical type of player that he's been in over the course of this year, besides the first 5 to 10 games of the season. He was an all-star for a reason. Without him, Jalen Brunson's job gets 10 times harder. The stress, the wear and tear that is inevitably going to be placed on him, that is going to accrue over time, could be too much for the Knicks to handle. But I think going forward, if you don't get Randle back at 100%, you're going to need Anunoby back at 100%. And when Mitchell Robinson comes back, this team will have a defensive identity. With Precious Achiuwa playing as solidly as he has as of late, like that's another promising thing. Like, there are definitely some things looking up, but right now, and fairly, a lot of these eyes and the focus is going to be set on Julius Randle and what kind of player he is when he comes back. Because it's like, I don't want to beat the dead horse. I don't want to continue to repeat myself here, but I think you understand, even without me saying this, that Julius Randle is just, I mean, say what you want about him. Going into this year, I thought the Knicks should have capitalized on, even halfway through the year, I said I think the Knicks would be smart to capitalize on the value that he's built because of how solidly he's played, because time has shown and history has shown that Julius Randle folds when the lights get the brightest. And I think he proved all of us wrong. Like right after he had that injury, or right after he fully healed from the ankle injury after those first 5 to 10 games of the season, when he became what everyone thought he could be for the Knicks, which is an all-star, a near superstar, a guy who irrefutably is one of the top 20, 25 players in the game. And he became that. And the Knicks had 2 of those guys. And the 1-2 punch of Brunson and Randle, how well they play off each other, how cohesively they play, the ball movement that they have, the chemistry that they have, is all that going to be for nothing now? If Julius Randle returns not 100%, that's what I'm thinking about. That's what I think all of you guys should think about as well. Enjoy it, for right now before he comes back. But we're all going to be focused on what eventually happens with Julius Randle. I think a lot of people are definitely more excited and hopeful about the return of Anunoby. It remains to be seen which of them is going to return first or which of them is going to ramp up their training even more. But both of them, listen, if Anunoby and Randle and Mitchell Robinson come back not at 100%, this team's cooked. It's done. No chance this team beats Boston. No chance this team gets back to the 2 or 3 seed and could get out of having to play Boston in the conference finals or in the conference semifinals, which I think would change everything. Would change the outlook on the year if the Knicks can't get into the 2 or 3 seed. And that is looking like an even more uphill climb as the days go on. But tonight is a big benchmark. It's what this Knicks team will have to be for the next 2 or 3 weeks, because you definitely won't have Randle back, I don't think, for the next 2 or 3 weeks. Definitely won't have Anunoby back, and you still have no idea what's happening with Mitchell Robinson. The Knicks need to figure it out. They need to figure out how to stay afloat. They need to win the games that are actually winnable. And we need to see the Knicks perform well against teams over 500. I mean, they're statistically the best team in the NBA against teams that are under 500. They just are. They beat every team that is under 500. It's against the teams that are over 500 that give me a little pause, and should give you a little pause as well. All right, that'll do it for this episode here. Let's go Knicks. Let's see what they've got tonight against the Sixers. A must-win game, as most of these games are going forward here. It's going to be tough to beat Boston. It's going to be tough to finally beat the Magic. I think they're 0-3 against the Magic this year, which is absurd to think about. But there are a lot of teams that are beatable over this upcoming stretch. Other teams that have a lot more to prove than the Knicks, but the Knicks are going to have to show up. They're going to have to keep it afloat. They're going to have to figure this out. And whether or not that happens, again, remains to be seen. All right. Again, that'll do it for this episode. If you like it, give me a subscription, give me a like down below, and I will talk to you guys all next week. Have a good one.